because I'm never one to shy away from shameless self-promotion, I recently released an article, first one in a year, on the young, restless, and red-pilled movement. I've been kind of silent on it, but after Tucker interviewed Nick Fuentes, and I was kind of shocked by a lack of questions of a certain variety, and then seeing the fallout of that, I thought this is actually going to be, it's going to continue to grow. There's dangers still ahead, and so I decided to throw my hat back into the mix, and I released another article the other day on this called The
Andrew,
Revenge of the Red-Pilled. So there's lots to talk about with this movement.
could you say that you have been vindicated? Would that be one word to describe what's taken place over the last, what it was 2 years ago since you wrote that article?
I would also say, so February of 2024.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
The first article, or maybe January.
So it's getting close to 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, but it was funny as I was looking over what I've written that, and I even mentioned this in the article, that even though 2 years ago I'm initially just kind of throwing up some warning alarms, right? Like 2 years ago I was basically throwing up like a perimeter alarm. There's movement outside the house. Floodlights on, right? Like,
yeah.
There's a little bit of movement outside the house. Let's get some lights on. We got to see what's going on. Like, get a better view here, right? Turn on your camera. But once it became apparent, at least to me, though not to everyone, that this is actually a very, very dangerous growing movement that is capturing the hearts of young men. So this would have been also early in 2024. I wrote the first article basically saying, hey, this is a big deal now. This is actually a big deal, and we need to be. But when I was outlining, so I basically wrote 4 articles in one calendar year on this topic. But as I would go from article to article, what I found was even my own understanding of the depths of it
would grow.
And I guess what I was seeing is some of the initial parts of it. There was a little bit of a winnowing, so to speak. So what I was seeing first, and the constituent parts of what I referred to as young, restless, and red-pilled, not all of those continued on as being parts of the more problematic worldview and ideology. That there were some things that, maybe they kind of fell off a little bit, or they weren't as big of an issue as I thought, or people jumped off the train. They realized, I don't want to be a part of this. But some of the core elements that were always there, the core elements being a radical, unhinged skepticism and distrust of all things except for your own opinion and expertise, has always been a part of it. The kind of hyper unbiblical masculinity and how that relates to the treatment of women, that's been there. And the woke right nature of it, where we deal in identitarianism and tribalism, where we categorize people in groups and we fail to recognize the individual.
Basically buying into kind of the leftist race determinism, but just from a more jaundiced right-wing view.
People in this movement despise being called the woke right, and they'll say, the woke right's a meaningless term. No, you say it's a meaningless term because you're in there, but to those of us who are actually conservative and who are right-leaning, who are looking at this, we're saying, no, woke right is an apt term because you're using the same tactics, just on a different. So, I just find it interesting that there's a lot of some of those initial concerns and some of the things I was seeing. Even myself in my own writing, I had to flesh out what I was seeing and my perception of it, and then I think I have a fully developed understanding of what's actually going on. But it was over 2 years ago now when I wrote that article, but it's over 2 years ago that I started seeing. This is not good. We got to be aware of this, guys. And within the church, we got to move away from this.
And you know what? So I was with you with that. One of the first things I think that probably cued us both off is just like even the disposition of a lot of these guys towards elder brothers in the faith, right? You
Yep.
should be giving them deference and respect and treating them as fathers in the faith. And that was never there, right? They were calling dismissing him as boomer idiots, that out of touch, and they were very quick to do that to like men who had, our forefathers in the faith that have paved the way, built a lot of the institutions, kind of run the course when it was even less popular. So that really, I'm glad you pointed it out. We had talks about it. We had some agreements, disagreements, but I think you have been largely vindicated in what you've put forward, with the conversation, and you saw it largely before other people saw it too. So it is it is difficult to wade into those waters because I know it's a toxic stew. But I appreciate your opinions, and I think you're right. The one thing that I will say though is, man, James Lindsay, who kind of like coined the woke right stuff because he saw a lot of overlap in like the tactics of online engagement and stuff like that. He doesn't help uh, is sometimes in the way that because I don't think he's theologically sharp enough to understand the distinctives.
No,
So he's like throw it like anybody who's like talking about Christian nations and has kind of a positive
I know.
vision for building in the future. He tends to lump into the woke right narrative, which is not helpful, right? And just
Well,
helps.
because in his mind, I think he ultimately denies a spiritual reality, and all he's doing is he's looking at human beings who are either using emotions or their reason or their thinking or their whatever to create these ideologies and push them. But because he denies the very real spiritual aspect of a historic enemy that
Hmm.
ultimately makes war with the saints
Hmm.
and will use people who feign allegiance for Christ to do that, he rejects that entire category, so he's going to miss it. He's
Yeah,
going
and
to miss it altogether.
it becomes when you don't have the power of the spirit working within you, it becomes hard to tell the wheat from the darnel, right? It's hard to make that judgment.
Yeah,
So a lot
yeah.
of times it's unhelpful in the way that he uses that term. So I understand why people kind of dismiss it. But I think it's right in the fact that yes, I think there's overlap in tactics
Yeah.
being used and employed in these conversations.
So
This is yeah.
all that
We
to
haven't
say,
even got
if
to the ad read,
yeah.
Andrew.
So for anyone who's interested, because I say this at the end of the article, I think 2026, I'll be devoting more time than I was planning on writing about this stuff because I was having a chat with a buddy from church actually just this last week. Just a solid, wonderful brother,
Hmm.
and we were talking about, so the day after, 2 days after Tucker interviewed Nick Fuentes, and so in like ethnically, um, where we grew up, experience, like him and I were this guy were totally different personality wise.
Hmm.
The comment, we love Christ. We have a certain type of mind and the way that we think and perceive and want to study and do theology and philosophy and just absorb material and information, but there's so many differences between us, so we're not homogenous in this regard.
Hmm.
But both of us were speaking, saying that it appears as if we are only just witnessing, and I believe this now, and I was hoping that the little bit of the hibernation that happened in this woke right movement, I thought that this, when I say this in the article, I thought maybe guys finally realized just how dangerous this was. But the hibernation was ended with the killing of Charlie Kirk. That it was and I say it was a literal trigger incident and a
Hmm.
symbolic trigger incident that it created a vacuum, and now a new leaders are emerging. And I think that we haven't even seen a fraction of the power, popularity, and influence of someone like Nick Fuentes. I think that the wave has just begun to crest, and I
Hmm.
people are thinking, wow, he's like, Tucker interviews him, he's bigger than ever. That I don't think we haven't seen anything yet. I think
Hmm.
that the more and more that guys shoot over biblical conservatism, and because we don't catch them, they fly right over us into this very radical position. These guys will become way more prominent, and you're going to start to see a syncretism. Right, Joel Webbin's talking about how Nick Fuentes is
Yeah.
great. We need to collaborate
Yeah,
together. Like you're going
yeah,
to start to see.
and Webben of Reich Response Ministries. Uh, he was saying, like, right after Charlie Kirk was dead, he was calling forward for Nick Fuentes to be the replacement, like to be the heir
Oh
apparent.
yeah.
And it
So
is
what's going to
like
happen?
Nick
This is what I
Fuentes
think.
is horribly vile.
Yes.
He's a
Yeah.
horribly vile human being, like from top to bottom, like in every one of his
Yeah.
opinions. Like it beggars my mind, and it's only by adopting the worst version of Neoter or Netter or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
that you could even stomach even remotely who Nick Fuentes is and what he's peddling. And he's just an awful, terrible human being. And I think,
oh, yeah.
oh, I was just going to say, I think what's really unhelpful, Andrew, and I think it's been unhelpful for a long time, but I think it's like now is the time where we have to actually practically get rid of it, is the left-right paradigm. Because I think the left-right paradigm forwards dialectical thinking, and it pushes people into a dialectical trap that has now it's catching people up, and it's actually becoming a stumbling block where it's false. It's not even a good way to describe the political spectrum, and it's allowing people with this false paradigm, it's allowing people to get all confused in their thinking and their categories, and it's allowing for the plausibility structure of those who consider themselves biblical conservative Christians to even sign on to like Erastianism and massive government intervention and anti-free market economics, all these things that I think are woven into the fabric of the biblical narrative and the creation that God's made. And that's why I think it's so unhelpful to be thinking, and it's actually funny because if you think back, Andrew, to the Antioch Declaration, which this group of dank right, woke right, whatever you want to call them, hated so much. Now they say it was because the context of the relationships that were swirling around, but they hated it, and they kind of poo-pooed it. Partly because of one thing that the Antioch Declaration talks about, which it is this false left-right dialectic that was a result of the French Revolution and the seating arrangements of the French Parliament, is not a helpful way for us to view the political spectrum. And I think you're seeing that especially now because they're caught in this false paradigm that forwards like dialectical thinking. They're trapped in this dialectical trap that's making them reactionaries, and they're employing this horrible friend enemy distinction. But that is like Carl Schmitt. It's Schmittian to the core. He was a Roman Catholic.
It's Schmitty, all right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Schmitty, all
But
right.
but it's so dangerous. But you can see how this is all working together, and maybe the one thing that you're not vindicated in is maybe it's the young black-pilled movement, right? That maybe they've gone all the way. They haven't just taken the red pill. They've gone all the way to the black at this point.
Well, but I don't know if that's the case, because I think that when I think about those who are black pilled, it's those who are like they've just utterly given up, right? The black pill is they're fatalistic. What's the point? These guys are not black pilled. They are ready to work, and they're ready to do whatever they need to cleanse and purify the West and all that entails. So they're not black. The black pill is the whatever. What's the point? It's all bad. It's all evil. We're out. They're not there. They are, which is why the picture that I use for the article is similar to the scene in the Matrix when Morpheus holds out two hands.
Yeah.
And one's red and one's blue. And in my picture, they're both red.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a double pill kind of thing. So I anyways, I think that the only where I will keep using the left-right paradigm is in this, and I say this in the article, with this particular understanding that in the center, right, balanced on a biblical position, are those with correct theological categories who espouse true biblical conservatism. And there is a left to us and a right to us, and we are enemies of both. That's where I'll continue to say I think that the paradigm works only insofar as here we are in the middle, and I say this, here I am in the middle,
Okay.
and the wokies hate my guts because I'm not progressive and I'm not intersectional and I'm not inclusive enough. So they hate my guts. But the right wokies also hate my guts because I've imbibed a post-war consensus and because I've been utterly brainwashed by Zionism.
Yeah, by the Jews.
So there is a left and right, but what's ironic, or not ironic, but what's interesting is here I am in the middle, and I am the enemy of both the left and the right because they've completely missed the mark. But there's a place in the center. There's a balanced place where we actually understand categories.
So
and they hate it from both sides.
So you're using them as ditches, right? Like there's a left and a right ditch. But
I think that's where we are now politically. I think that there's the left ditch.
Okay.
And there's the right ditch.
But you understand, obviously, that's not obviously what the center has traditionally meant. So so even that conception is, I think, more helpful than the current spectrum. But like, that's the thing. Like, I just want us to think, and in that way, maybe it's helpful because I just want us let's think biblically about all these things. Let's
because traditionally the right, when you say the right politically, what you don't mean are pro-fascists.
No.
But that's where we are now. There are those who would say they're on the political right that say what we need to do is we need to democratically elect a leader who will do away with elections in order to save us. A la Francisco Franco, like that's
Weimar problems need Weimar solutions.
Fascism, Nazism, socialism are all on the left. Are all on the left side of the. This is one of the
which is isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic, Andrew? Is they in making this whole situation plausible, this really left-right dynamic that a lot of these dank right guys think about, they actually have to agree with and accept the terms of the left to do it, right? Because it's the lefties who want to put the fascists on the right side of the spectrum, but it's always been the people who actually know history that it's like, what are you talking about? Like they're literally the nationalist socialists. I mean, these guys are big government,
and the more control they have, you're moving away from the right.
Yes.
So how could you? There's no world where you see the state growing, its power growing, its spending growing, where you're moving to the right. That doesn't exist. It's always to the left in terms of historical, political. You know what I think, Matt? I think I don't know if we can cue people that hey, we didn't actually get to the episode for a while. I think we should we should cut this out of the episode. We should just go right from the introduction to the ad read. We should cut this out of the episode and we should release it separately because I actually want to release this discussion separately, even on my own. My own stuff. I think that this it's really good. Like this has been good. Yeah, but I almost want to say
it's not part of
here's some extra content. But for anyone who's made it this far and who's watching just this segment, again, the mapletheonomist.substack.com. The article I just released is called "Revenge of the Red-pilled," and we're going to be. I say at the end, I feel like I will be wading in these waters in 2026, and I'm inviting people to come join me for a swim because I think that
it's pretty murky, Andrew. You don't know what's down there.
The the power, the prominence of this movement, I don't even think we've seen. I think we're still in the beginnings of it. I think that it's only going to, this is nothing. Like we think, wow, it's grown. This is nothing. This is going to become big, because what's going to happen is a lot of these, and I can think of guys who I'm not going to name, guys I know personally or guys I simply know because of their fame and their popularity. But I know there will be professing Christian pastors, the same ones who were totally outspoken against totalitarianism and tyranny, who will now be advocating for a very heavy-handed version of statist Christian nationalism, who are now, even though 5 years ago they would have said, we want nothing to do with someone like Nick Fuentes. He's a pagan.
Yeah.
Now they will embrace these men because, and this is again, this is another way that this is a woke tactic. The trans maniacs and the jihadis will come together to destroy the West. And in the same way, the professing faithful biblical pastors and the Gnostic, neo-Gnostic, neo-pagan woke righties will now also join together, not because of a common love, but because of a common hatred and because of a common enemy that must be destroyed. And again, that's why we're right in the middle. So whether it's the purple-haired or the burqa covered, or whether it's the Webbins and the Fuenteses, you will now see people who should otherwise be enemies, who will now join forces because their common goal will be
the enemy of my enemy is my friend type
us.
thing.
Us.
Yeah.
We are now the common, and they will say, no, we're the enemy. They're coming after us. I'm like, no. What they're coming after are the vestiges that you hold on to, and it's the pseudo-Christian veneer that you have. That's what they're actually coming after. But what you actually represent is more from Satan than not. So they actually want nothing to do. That's not the issue. Anyways.
Well, and just a word of caution as we kind of, I don't know what this happened to be, but as we broke into this impromptu session, as a way of closing it off, I would just speak, very, direct to the people who we're talking about, who might be straddling that camp. And you just need to know there's a warning in Scripture for people who even have the right hates, but their loves are not right? And I think of the first church in Revelation, start of chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, the church at Ephesus. Interestingly enough, Jesus lauds them for what they hate. They hate the works of the Nicolaitans, but they're overzealous. In what they hate, they have lost the love of Christ Jesus. And for that, God warns them that he might remove their lampstand if they do not get back to their first love. So for those who are flirting with ungodly, unbiblical, demonic, supposed right-wing convictions and are leaving off the love of Christ, you must remember what we hate is determined first and foremost by what we love, and that's the Lord Jesus Christ. And even if we have enemies, we're not called to treat them as though they aren't image bearers of God, aren't fellow humans, but we're actually called to love them, which means to fulfill the law of God, respecting them, because that is what we're to do. We're supposed to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And hopefully this was an interesting discussion with you. For everybody, again, if you want to check out what we've put out on some of this stuff, we actually have extended interviews talking about the woke right, some of the stuff, go over to ldcanada.substack.com. And also Maple Theonomist, Andrew, that's right. That's where all your articles live on these subjects. So please engage. If you don't agree, tell us. Try not to use the most colorful profanities. If you can do that, we would love to have a discussion with you. But anyways, this was an impromptu episode, but hopefully it was a helpful discussion, and hopefully we'll have more.
Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you by SDG Media. If you want to stay in touch with us and all things Liberty Dispatch, join our email list, or support the show, head over to ldcanada.substack.com.